Alright, so my opponent states that if they did 2 crimes, they should deserve the punishment of the 3rd strike, whether they committed a violent felony or not. My opponent states that the 3-strike law is fair. My opponent stated that the 3-strikes law was uncostly, however, provided no evidence. My opponent is also just making generalizations of the thing because there's not much sources and stuff. I'm going to start off by saying that for the first one, my opponent states if they did 2 crimes, they should deserve the punishment of the 3rd. California's 3-strike law applies to some felonies committed when the person was a juvenile, and the law does not take into account the length of time between felonies. So the 3rd could happen 30 years after the first 2, and you can still be punished harshly. So basically, like, let's say during your early years, like 17, you do certain crimes, and then you 30 years later get caught stealing something. You're punished really, really harshly, and instead of, like, they don't take into consideration that maybe you're just doing the usual teenage stuff. I'm going to how California prisons are overcrowded. According to Matt Yogas, who's the researcher of the 3-strikes law, criminal behavior peaks at the early states of 20 and tapers off after 30. The system is letting out younger prisoners who are more likely to commit a crime because they have the amyloid, the inhumane prison conditions. It also hurts the state budget because old people take up the beds for the younger men. Here's an example. To accommodate for the bulging population in prisons, inmates are being housed in prison gymnasiums. To maintain order in these gymnasiums, they are segregated among racial lines, which is unjust and not equal. There is no rehabilitation being done in the prison, so that's obviously how they end up back. That's a flaw in the system. My opponent says that the opponent states if they did 2 crimes, they should deserve the punishment of the 3rd. Well, if there's no rehabilitation in the prisons, how can the person learn the first 2 times they're in prison to not commit something else? So it's kind of very vague and unjust to declare that they deserve the 3rd strike because they weren't allowed the tools to learn from their mistakes. Also, my opponent states that it is uncostly for this. However, if it is uncostly, why did they have to cut rehabilitation from prisons to make up for the cost? Here's an example from Michael Rothfield. He says that the official plan to cut $250 million a year from rehabilitation services, more than 40% of what the state now devotes to them, and a quarter of the $1 billion is a slicing from its prison system. So the reduction of the services due to the massive budget crisis will increase the likelihood of repeat offenses. So, as I restate that having to cut rehabilitation shows that it is expensive and costly to keep these people in prison, as well as they don't have any way of learning. So obviously that's why they're going to end up back there. And studies showed that generally people who leave prison get sent back to their neighborhood where they came from. So if they didn't learn anything while they're in prison for those 2 years, and they go back to the same neighborhood, they're just going to go back doing the same exact things that they were doing back in the day. And that's why I say that the 3-strikes law is unjust and that we should change the 3rd strike to not be a final felony because of this.